Jean-Denis, it's good to see you.
Yeah, Stephen, it's great to see you. It's been a while.
It has been a while. You led engineering. You were CTO over at Plaid, but you left to start a new thing called Town. What's Town all about?
Town is it's an AI assistant that knows you. We call them townies. It's an AI assistant that basically works off of your email, your calendar, your most popular SaaS, and just does work for you. And it's built on a layer of context about who you are, what you do, what projects you're working on, who do you work with, how do you communicate with those people so that it can both anticipate and do your work more like you would in the first place. So, our idea is that there's a lot of like cumbersome, repetitive, kind of boring parts of everyone's jobs for every white collar worker. And we're trying to make those go away so you can focus on the things as a human that you like and are really good at. We're big believers that, AI should be like friendly, approachable, and easy and simple. And it's for everyone, right? It's not just for like engineers or so-called like tech employees. It's really for everyone, and so we try to make the AI really like feel personable. Like we have little avatars, and you give them names, and they're kind of hokey or a little bit like cute, and you feel like you have something that understands you as a human. And that's gone a long way towards making the product kind of grow virally and have really good word of mouth, even though we're still in the greater scheme of things, like in the you know one batter into the first inning of our journey.
Incredible. Yeah, the UX around AI seems like an opportunity. Obviously, we've all got chat bots and folks are pretty comfortable using those, but they're kind of blank canvases. And technical people are using AI in all sorts of creative ways, but creating a product UX around what AI can do for you feels like a huge opportunity right now.
I think most people don't really know what AI can or can't do. Do you know what I mean? They use it like either as a replacement for a Google search, and it's really good at that, right? And ChatGPT has 800 or 900 million users because it's a better version of that. And often they cut and paste things in there to help them draft emails or do first pass of docs. But I think there's like a pretty big gap between what it can do and how easy we've made that to happen. So it is a UX gap. There's like a question I ask myself, like if you're in the subway in New York City and there's like a teenager next to you on like TikTok or something, and you watch how they're like putting things together, or Instagram. To me, it's like, oh, I could never, it would take me an hour to like edit that little like 15-second video, but the teenager is doing it in like 45 seconds. So, a question I ask myself is like, maybe for next generation that's really AI native, it's not a UX problem. Like maybe for them, that chat box that they can type stuff into will be very natural because they will know exactly what to ask and how to ask it, and they will get the right results. But I think most people aren't yet kind of like really truly AI native. So there's definitely an opportunity, there. Like for us, I'll give you a stat, like 15% of interactions with Town, we suggest. So we'll say like, oh, you received this email. Do you want us to do this research and put together a deck? Right. And we like just suggest to the person, and then they just say like, yes, do that. That's 15% of the interactions. And the way I think about that, it's like 15% of interactions that probably wouldn't have had happened if we didn't tell the
Right.
person like, hey, I can do this for you. Like just delegate it to me.
Right. Very cool. So your team is building agents and AI solutions for folks,
Yeah.
but then you're also using AI a lot internally. Your development
Yes.
team is, would you say that your development team is AI pilled?
Yeah, we're AI pilled. And I think when if we ever feel like we're not enough, we talk about it as a team because it's moving real fast.
Yeah.
AI pilled today, AI backwards tomorrow.
Yeah. That is such an interesting dynamic right now because, there's SaaS apocalypse. And I think the way that people have traditionally thought of moats in SaaS products is changing and collapsing because you can build so much faster now than you could have built a couple years ago. And what you're doing with, building these assistants, these personalized assistants, I mean, it puts you in the competitive arena with the big dogs and like the big tech companies, the model providers, things like that. So you clearly think there's an opportunity and that some of those kind of advantages of the past might not exist to the same extent. So how are you thinking about AI changing moats and defensibility and how that's creating opportunities for startups like yourself?
I mean, one answer is like I don't know. Like in the sense that nobody knows what exactly the moats are going to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, like whenever we settle from the current wave of innovation. But the best way to find out is to be in the arena, right? And you're in there and you're trying to figure it out with everyone else, and you're getting the product signal and the market signal as early as anybody. So, I don't think you could have sat around in like 1998 and understand what would make, some internet companies really, really successful. I don't think you could have sat around, you know, in early MySpace, Facebook land and known kind of what the moats were going to be there. So you can theorize about it all you want, but like part of it, the answer for me is like pragmatic. You got to be in there doing it. There's a few things I am sure about, which is some of the existing moats are gone. So, like vertical SaaS, like the last 15 years of software have been really interesting because you could start a company, spend a year building your first product, and then you kind of got product market fit. And then other people would notice that and they would want to copy your product, and it would take them a year to catch up. But by then, you'd had another year of more input from users, so you're ahead, and then they would like catch up again, but then you're a year ahead. So the end result is in most vertical SaaS, by the time you had the like 2 to 3 top companies, they would just stay ahead of everybody else. And then eventually venture capitalists are like, I'm not investing in the fifth company because I'd have to give you so much more money just to catch up with the product roadmap, and then the other people would be ahead of you. So I think that dynamic is dead, unfortunately, because now you can copy someone else in like weeks to months. And so when you can copy someone else in weeks to months, any like advantage to being early in product disappears like pretty quickly. And so I think in a sad way for someone who's benefited now I'm old, I'm like 47. So I've benefited for, 20 plus years of my career from software being both like, not having a supply of enough engineers. And then even once you got the engineers, it would take a long time to copy things. I've benefited from that economically tremendously. And I think that advantage is going away. I'm sure of that. But there's a bunch of other advantages that I don't think are going anywhere, right? Like, so distribution might be more of an advantage today because it's easier to build like the plus one features that you can use your distribution channels to send to users. So that's true. Uh, Network effects, I don't think are going away. And actually, question I ask myself quite often is like, what do network effects look like when there's a lot of AI agents going around? And there may be very interesting network effects that no one's really unearthed that could make businesses more valuable, than they've ever been. There's clearly like, there's a lot of questions around data moats and whether like trajectory data or private data will end up itself being very valuable. I don't know where that lands. I just think it's going to be increasingly hard to build companies that don't allow their data to be shared if the user wants it with someone else.
Yeah,
Because
everyone wants
LLMs,
MCPs and interoperability and to build custom
yeah,
workflows.
and because it benefits the LLMs need more data to be successful. And so like I think if your whole business strategy is like I'm going to capture more data and not make it available, I think there'll be more skepticism. I mean, this is like heard on the street, but there are some large enterprises that 18 months ago signed large contracts with one of the frontier models to power some of their like say enterprise AI offerings, and that company is no longer leading as much as they once were, so to speak. And those enterprises are like, well, I kind of wish my data wasn't, it's not just about the LLM model that they're using from that frontier. It's like they're using like the RAG pipeline and like, and I think some of those enterprises are like, well, you're not winning. And not just that, like the Chinese models are really cheap. And so I wish I could take all these things that I've built on you and make it available over there. And now they're doing that. And so you look at that and you got to be like, well, I don't know who will be able to stand up and say, no, I will not allow my data to be federated. I mean, Salesforce, right? Just literally like in the last 2 weeks has jumped on the like, hey, okay, fine, you can more freely access our data in our system of record. So I don't know about data moats or trajectories, but we will see what the moats are. I believe they're going to be there. I wouldn't be out there building if I didn't think they would exist. Endgame.
Well, let's talk about speed a little bit more. Speed is now a table stakes, and the
Yeah.
folks who are embracing AI are delivering faster than those who aren't. Given that your team is AI pilled, and I'm seeing the velocity of town from the outside. I'm watching what you guys are shipping. It does feel like the velocity is different than it was like 2 years ago. How do you see it as a leader, observing your team and pushing your team, and what can you do now that you would have struggled to do a couple of years back?
Yeah, I mean, the velocity at which we operate is like truly, I don't know if it's like 3x faster, 5x, or 10x, but it's like in a different universe than most of my software engineering career before. Like we were talking about earlier about like we built a mobile app in 2 weeks. Was it amazing? No, but it was like an MVP that we could get user feedback from and iterate on top of, and it was like secure and safe and deployed, and had 5 out of the top 10 features that users wanted out of mobile. It's crazy, right? Because when you and I were at Dropbox, it'd take like 6 months to build like a mobile app from scratch or something. It was so
Yeah,
the
the Apple approval probably took longer than the build did.
100%. I mean, we're still not launched in a bunch of countries because we just got to jump through all the hoops. Yeah, it's nuts. Yeah, so here's what we do. First, frankly, we look at Anthropic's velocity and we're like, oh, that's kind of the gold standard. I mean, that company, not all of Anthropic, but the labs group that's responsible for Claude Code and Cowork, they're shipping at very high velocity. I'd like to think we're like faster, but I mean, for us, like we need to be at that order of magnitude or it's over. And so we have there's a few companies like them or Ramp that we look at and we're like, hey, they are showing us what's possible. And I wake up every week and I ask myself, like, are we within 10, 20% better or worse than those companies? And if we're not, we need to have a conversation about it. The second part of the team is we talk about AI a lot. Like we just talk about it at lunch. We all are talking to our friends at labs or different other companies that are doing well, kind of like trying to understand how are they operating differently? What are they doing that's better? Like, how could we change about how we build? Um, and there's a lot of information sharing. It's not all just like, you know, vibe code all the time, right? Some of it is on this area of the product now, it's been like way too much vibe coding. Like the time has come to like build it again. And before that, as an engineer, you never would build again because it was, or rarely would because it was huge investment. Now building again from scratch, once you have the tests and the evals and the product requirements, actually is like, you can do it pretty damn fast. There's like an interesting little tidbit for you. There's a bunch of companies that like literally have like 20% of their engineers, like these are smaller places, but like their job is to just do red diffs, red PRs. PRs are just continuously removing code. Because you all know if you use a lot of AI, it's a lot of green PRs. Like it's always writing more code, reinventing. The problem with that is then the next time around, it takes longer for the LM to know the right way to do something because there's like too much code, too many ways to do the same thing. So if you view it like that way, it's like if you reduce the complexity for yourself, you're also reducing the complexity for an agent, which makes it faster the next time around. So there's like some of these learnings that we hear from other teams, and then someone will maybe try it, and then at lunch they'll talk with the rest of the team about how they did it. Like that part is big. I just don't think it's figured out. So if your motion has to be, we're always talking about it. And sometimes, by the way, some Twitter influencer will say something, and you will like try it, and it just will like not work. And you're in the world of like people are just bragging more than anything else. That's why I can't tell you if we're like 3 times faster, 10 times faster. I can't tell you exactly what part of our process makes us faster because I think it's like some of it is working, some of it isn't. We're 11 people, so how do you judge it? But we try our best. And then the third pillar, which is this is like old school engineering, is I believe that like clock speed determines how fast you ship. So we have a crazy clock speed. We say we will ship one large major feature every week, and we usually know the next 2 or maybe 3 major features. So that means effectively at any one point in time, 1 or 2 people are working on what's shipping next Monday. 1 or 2 people are working on what's shipping the Monday after that. Maybe one person is building like the prototype MVP of what's shipping 3 weeks from now. And everything that we've shipped, nothing has taken longer than 3 weeks so far in the history of the company. And I think just putting that constraint, it's a hard constraint. People don't like it. It means sometimes we're working on Saturday and Sunday because we don't quite have the level of polish that we want for the next Monday. But it forces people to be really creative with the tooling to get there. Human beings are very creative. And so when you put constraints on them that feel impossible, people will like find some way to power through. And what's cool about AI is I think like people can test the hypotheses about how to be faster, the ingenuity, like much better than ever before. So I actually love that constraint, and it's been huge for us. And even when people thought it would be impossible to do something, we've almost every time figured out a way to get it done.
Very cool. Yeah, and something that I heard in there is this idea of prototyping and getting to market fast to get feedback with comfort to come back and rework, like almost discard or rewrite or revisit the code that you used to quickly validate an idea, right? Is that something that you're incorporating into your kind of product development mindset at Town?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a big believer of prototyping. When you're an early stage company like us, we don't have like a million users, and we don't have, you know, like JP Morgan Chase is not today a customer of Town. Our customers are smaller and more understanding of what I would say like experimental features. So when you're lucky to have customers that are willing to deal with the pain of like inconsistent UI or a feature that works like 95% of the time but not 100% of the time, you can afford to ship prototypes. And
Yeah,
and just like you said, sometimes the prototypes work, sometimes they don't work, and you just throw them away, right? Or you get better input into what to do next. So we're lucky to be there. I would like to think we can keep that development process much, much longer. But inevitably, once JP Morgan is a customer and runs their entire AI and ops on top of Town, um, we probably won't be able to put them in the prototype new features. So you have to
sure,
think about that.
sure.
The second part actually goes back to the chat box from before. This is interesting about AI. Like first, people expect that it won't always work, which is kind of cool when you think about it, right?
It's
And
like
number two,
probabilistic, right? As opposed to
that's right.
deterministic.
And then so what can happen too in the product when you build a new feature is it can be rougher. And if the AI can set expectations and ask follow-up questions of the user, you may still get an outcome that's okay for everybody. So it's actually easier, I think, to hide kind of like broken parts of the UX because you can just have a prompt. You have a new tool that's supposed to do something like you have a new tool that's supposed to generate like walking maps in a neighborhood, right? It just turns out that it doesn't know about hills. And you live in San Francisco and people use the new tool and they're like creating walking maps. And you could just have it like tell the user, like, hey, I'm just not good at hills. And just like you should know that this walking map is not hill aware. And I can't make a walking map that's aware of hills, but actually like I can search online. So maybe I can like find a topographic map and like try to do my best to tell you that in case here I have asked you, in fact, to go up and down a bunch. It's kind of weird. It's not the right product experience. You wish the tool just did it correctly, but the LLM can like hide itself, hide its shortcomings in some other way. So we found that to be an interesting aspect of the product experience. Or we also, like another example for us is we draft emails for users. And the reality is like, if you get 100 emails from our users that are supposed to have draft replies, maybe we can only write good draft replies half of the time. And the other half, we just don't have the information to write the right answer. We just don't know what it should be. Well, so what we just do is we just don't do draft replies for the other 50%. And we're just like, oh, can't help you, right? And from the user, we thought they would experience it as weird that sometimes they get drafts and sometimes they don't. But actually, their mental model is like, oh, when I get a draft, it's helpful. And when I don't, I would just have to do as much work as before. And so you can think about how does the UX expose your experimental feature in a way where it's not maybe as jarring for the end user.
Right,
So I spent a lot of time
right.
thinking about it. But I do hope we can prototype forever because it's so much easier to prototype than it's ever been.
Yeah, and this kind of relates to a LinkedIn post that I saw you make a week or two back where you were talking about evals, right? Like a new model comes out and the new models are being assessed against these benchmarks, right? So, oh, they're better. They're doing better on,
Yeah.
Sweetbench or whatever. But then in practice, what does that mean for your product UX and actually thinking about like the evals that you have in place for your product?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, to some extent, there's no substitute for good user feedback, right? That's the ultimate eval is like, do
Hmm.
people like it and want to buy it and stuff like that? But yeah, I'm curious, like, because you're going through a lot of this, there's probabilistic dynamics in the things that you are building. How are you doing like kind of those evals and thinking about whether something is an improvement or not as you're iterating?
Yeah. I mean, the real answer is I think we just don't have enough data right now to do it the
Hmm.
way I want to do it. I want to do it with A/B testing. The
Hmm.
way I want to do it is I want to get a new model. I want to like put some users in it. I want to see the trajectories. Then I want to have an LLM automatically like tweak prompts based on whether the trajectories are not as good as they should be. And then I want to like A/B test the tweaks. And I think I can't automate a lot of that, but I think we could automate a decent amount of it. That's what I want to do. But for us, there's a lot of areas where we just don't have enough trajectories where we could A/B test. And so then you're in a tough spot because you get a new model, and even if the benchmarks are much better, often the new model is not as good for your users for like really dumb reasons. Like maybe it's more verbose. And this may
Hmm.
seem not a big deal, but like your users are used to like a paragraph long answers, and you put in, like GPT-5.5 or something, and suddenly you get 3 paragraph answers. And even if the answers are better, your users get annoyed. It's like not the same voice. So I think for us right now, it is tough to go across providers because I do think Anthropic and OpenAI and Gemini, they spend a lot of time across like version bumps, making sure that their models, quote unquote, feel similar as the last one. So that the feel part is hard because if the feel is different, you really have to adjust your prompting.
Yeah.
And and the problem with adjusting the prompting is suddenly like all your evals won't be as good with the new model. And so then you have to ask, are they not as good because the model's not as good, or is because my prompting's not quite right for the characteristics of this new model family? And then even within a provider, even like within Anthropic, you will get some of those issues. So, for us, it's usually like we'll try the new model internally on our team for a bit. If we think there's some areas where it's much better, then we'll put it there. If we're not sure, we're like, might as well stay with the old one for a bit longer, maybe 2 version bumps. The quality increase will be, much clearer. But the answer for you is we just need more scale. Like if the companies that I've talked to that have a lot more scale that can take more of the A/B testing approach, like you said, like the A/B testing with are the end results there for the user? Can you see the user behavior? Like those are much better because when you're doing evals, you're at some point you're judging. You're making a judgment whether like the feel and the trajectory of this conversation is ending up at the right result. Right?
Right.
It's not objective all the time. People aren't saying like, hey, what's 2 plus 2? Right? Where you can be like, oh, well, if it's not 4, it's wrong. People are like, hey, can you do research on these 2 competitors? This one wrote like a new blog post. And it's just like, what's the right answer to that? Like, the right answer is, are people using the research report from the LLM, or are they typing all caps like, F you model, why can't you get it
Right.
right? Don't you
Right.
understand that I was asking about this other blog post? Like, your eval's not gonna help you there, unfortunately.
Right.
If you have a better answer for that one, like let me know. Because that is like when you're in pure LLM land, the trajectory stuff is it's like the water of life.
Well, I see this a lot on like the coding side, right? Because code ultimately is truth of how products behave. It's executed. There's a output that is either correct or incorrect, right?
Mhm.
And we're now using non-deterministic systems to generate code that we want to determine deterministic outcomes, right? And to have
Yeah.
correctness. And so the techniques that I'm seeing is teams investing a lot in the harness, the infrastructure, the code review, the quality assurance that
Yeah.
guarantees that we'll just let the agent run for longer and let it run into the bumpers and let it run into the test failures and get feedback that it needs to try again. Because if you don't have those things, it's actually really hard to steer these agents toward correct outcomes. And then senior engineers complain about code review and AI slop and things like that. So this whole game of like, how do you invest in taking non-deterministic systems to become deterministic? I think the software engineering discipline is going through that journey right now. And there's a lot of corollaries to the ultimate product experience that we're going to want to shape for customers. We're going to want maybe not 100% determinism, but like a reasonable level of determinism. And I think the harnesses and the support and the
Yeah.
tooling around this stuff is going to evolve as this develops as like a new practice and a new skill of the trade. Maybe one final wrap up question, just as you've been using AI internally with your own development practices, have you found any good hacks, tricks, harness techniques, things like that that you feel like the team is getting better outcomes from their use of Claude Code or their use of Cursor? Is there a lot of, I imagine there's a lot of rampant experimentation, people kind of sharing things that are working for them. Any techniques that you would
Yeah.
recommend to folks who might be listening in?
I mean, a really basic one is like we find that having a plan discussion with the model, but what you tell it, it's not allowed to write any interfaces at all. Because one thing we found often is like you put it in plan mode and you explain what you want to do, and it asks you some follow-up questions, and then immediately it's like it's telling you what the systems are and what the interfaces are. And as soon as it does that, you're like, it's like your aperture has gone from this to like that direction. And as an engineer, sometimes you feel like there's still a lot in there. There's a lot of details, but actually you want it to be in just like like one higher level of abstraction for longer. So like some like real simple tricks is like tell it not to write any code, any interfaces, any stubs, like have it like provide potential architectures. Then the second trick on this is like you want to get rid of its trajectory. So ask it to put it in MD, close it, start it again, or even better. I personally I do this. I don't think a lot of people on my team do, but I like love to go back and forth between Codex and Claude in the plan mode. But the point is like just start again and just be like, an engineer gave me the spec, and this is what we're trying to accomplish. Like critique it. Tell me
Yeah.
what are the pros and the cons. Just doing that before any abstractions are written in code, I think is very, very helpful. So that's like one trick that I would say, because it's, now once you've got the right plan, it'll implement, like there's variance within the plan, but it'll do a decent job. I think the second thing, this is not a trick, but this is where you need discipline, in my opinion, is if you tell the AI to do something, and you don't have just the right function written for it to do some building block of that thing, it will write the code from scratch. It just will do it. You know what I mean? It like will not
Yeah.
find the right util. It'll like copy your util function and like write
Just
another one with 3
verbosity.
lines different. And
Yeah.
it's just, so I think what it's hard to stop, because when engineers in these mode, usually you don't mind so much. And then when you get the like 700 line PR, you might not notice because your code base is like huge, right? It's like 400,000 lines of code. You don't even remember. Before, the code was handcrafted, so you remembered all the things. Now you don't even remember really where the things are. So that's like this is a problem. Claude Code has like slash simplify, which is pretty good. So I do slash simplify like way earlier. Meaning I have the plan, and then I get the stuff like that. I'm like, hey, let's come up with the stubs. What are the functions? What are the like classes? What are the like the modules and components that you have? It shows that to me. And then I'm like, okay. Now go look in the code base for things that are like below this that you might need, and like document what you're going to reuse and what you want to abstract away. And I have an abstraction plan where it basically like figures out what code reuse it wants before we're in the final code. So I spend more time on those two things. And usually when I have those two things, I feel pretty good. And then the third trick is the one I recommended before, which is like, I think you should just do this. Someone just go in like a set of files that work together, sit down and be like, hey, let's refactor this together. Just like talk to it. Like, tell me what the extraneous code, how would you write it again? And if you do that, I guarantee you can like shave 2,000 lines of code almost everywhere in your code base. But no one spends the time doing it. It takes real
Yeah.
discipline to spend that time. But we found that good. Usually we don't do it like everywhere, but we have like a part of the code base that we know we're going to work a lot on, and we know it's gotten a little hairy, and we do that. And then the
Yep.
final advice I would have that we just started doing this is we had like pretty bad performance because too many REST endpoints were being called from the front end, and the caching wasn't quite right. And so now we've added performance metrics to what gets reported to like the PRs. And the discipline is like much like when you have a PR, you're like, hey, review it for security, review it for simplicity, just review it for performance. And this is one of the things about LLMs. If you like give it more input and things that they have to optimize around, like all the tests have to be green, like no page load can be longer than 200 milliseconds, like, and it has the data and it can just like test it.
Yeah.
You will get better improvement. Now,
You
sometimes
spin up an environment in which the agent can exercise the code and test everything and run perf tests.
There's no difference for us between what it can do locally and what it can do in CI/CD. Like we're lucky that we just started with that, so it always has full access to all of the things. I'll just say this out there, like, so, I mentioned we built like both an iOS app. We actually also built a desktop app, and like the speed up on iOS is less than on web. It just is, and it's both because there's probably less training data, right? There's probably less open source of like world-class iOS apps. So there's, it's not quite as good at engineering them the right way. But also on iOS, you can't be as fast because if I mess it up, I'm like a broken build out in the universe, and then I got to get people to auto upgrade, right? We're more careful with iOS, and so we get less speed up, of it than everywhere else. And so I think this is like a lesson for me from Plaid is, if you're competing with Anthropic with the same constraints as Anthropic, then you sure as hell need to move faster than Anthropic. But if you're not competing with Anthropic, you're competing in healthcare, and the constraints of what you can get right and wrong are different. Your speed is going to look, fundamentally different. And so, we're building like a prosumer, like, agent that automates work for you, that helps you with email and so on. So like, I know who our competitive set of companies are, and also know the parts of my product where I can't afford to move fast, and the parts of my product, like data privacy and security, that absolutely
Totally.
like can't get wrong. And so again, it's not like we have a universal like software development lifecycle model everywhere, because different things need to be done differently. Like our storage system, like our key rotations, like those things have to be done very, very well. And we're not like vibe coding key rotation, right? That's just
Yeah,
like
sure,
not, this is
sure.
not what we're doing, right? Because
That's
that,
something that I feel is often missed in the Twitter influencer discussions about all of this. It's the lack of nuance that
yeah,
different customer profiles, different platforms, different domains merit different constraints on how you
yeah.
develop. So,
If you're like a big company with lots of enterprise data, and you're like wondering why is your database team not like, surfing, like, well, they're not moving at light speed because you don't want them to. Like it just,
yeah, yeah,
maybe they should be 20% faster than they were before, but like a 10x speed up there makes no sense. If you're an early stage startup like us, and you're doing a lot of front end and product work, and you've not found a way to like be multiples faster, like you will lose, because they're on front end, especially, right? Like where your API endpoints aren't moving, like, oh my God, why is it not moving fast? So
excellent closing thought. Jean-Denis, big thanks for spending the time with us and sharing some of your learnings
yeah,
from Town. Where can folks check out Town if they want to check you out?
town.com. We have the
Cool.
four-letter domain. Yeah, town.com. Try it out. It's fun. In 2 weeks, this may or may not be out. But so you heard it first. Where I have like little new avatars coming out, and it's very cute. I don't know if you like read like Philip Pullman books or whatnot, but there's a thing where we're trying to make the AI feel approachable. So just for that, people should go to town.com and check out
Cool.
the
Cool.
avatar universe. Can I think span? Is that okay? Because you
Yeah.
asked, I do look at engineering productivity actually on span to see kind of, you know, not just the relative speed of team members, but also of different areas of the code base. And I do want to give like a shout out to that, because I think for the team members, it has actually helped me realize some people are doing pretty fast stuff working on the same areas as others, and encourage conversations. And then just from like, the code base overall, like, yeah, it's not one universe, right? The entire code base may be a monorepo, but not from an AI perspective. So yeah, it's a great product for that. And it's, we're still very blind in terms of how to use this stuff, but you're doubly blind, I think, if you don't have like some analytics around it, which most of us don't. Anyway, I don't know if you want to use the plug, but I believe it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have said it.
Thanks for the shout out. Thanks for the shout out.